Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with Julius Caesar. This is by Columbia Games. They do have this on Kickstarter currently. Depending on how quickly I'm able to get this edited up will determine how many days they have left, but there are a handful of days, should be at least, left on the Kickstarter if you want to check this one out. So pop over there and take a look when you're done watching this video. So before we get into the specifics of this game, which we're going to go over all the minutiae, all the good stuff, there was included a little pamphlet here, and I was going through it and looking through some of Columbia's stuff. And a lot of their games are games that I haven't spent too much time with because obviously they are block games, right? A lot of blocks in their stuff, which I like the blocks, but it's a hit or miss as far as solitaire play goes, which you guys know is my big thing. But I gotta say, the blocks have been growing on me. And after taking a look through some of their other stuff that they've got or are going to be releasing, I was like, yeah, I kind of want to show you guys some of this too. Obviously, if you like what you see here coming up with Julius Caesar, they got some Rommel in the Desert, which is going to be having a deluxe version soon. But they have some different types going on, right? So areas, roads, or hexes. Now, area is area control, like you've seen in plenty of other games. Hex and counter. This would be hex and block. Roads is the middle one. Roads is what Julius Caesar is, right? So once we get done with this, you'll understand what the difference is. You should already understand areas and hex and counter, but there are all these different games in these different styles. So areas, roads, hexes, all that good stuff. But they do have some really good looking ones. If you're into World War II, like some strategy, block games, this victory one really caught my eye. A lot of content for this, a lot of vehicles, control points, obviously hex and counter on this one. I'm going to say hex and counter, but hex and block. But this one looks really, really good. And if you're into sci-fi, right, they've got this wizards and kings stuff. And you can see down over here, we've got Amazons, dwarves, undead. I gotta love the undead. I always go with undead. Feudal, barbarians, elves, orcs. And you can see you can set up multiple different types of maps with that game. So if you like what you've seen as far as all this block content goes, make sure you check them out. Columbia Games, they've got a lot of cool looking stuff. And I am going to actually talk to them probably a little bit, see if I can maybe cover stuff like victory here. I think I would get a big kick out of this game. Looks like a lot of cool stuff going on. Tanks, planes, ships, all that cool stuff. Things that we like to see in our games. All right, so as far as Julius Caesar here goes, this one is based on the I almost said 1949, the 49 to 45 BC. So this is way back in the day stuff. The Roman Civil War with Caesar versus Pompey and trying to determine if it was going to be republic or empire or who was going to take control. We've got our two different sides here. We've got Pompey, which are the green blocks with the gold look to them. There we go. And of course, Rome is going to be, I think Caesar's up here. Yeah, here we go. We got Caesar. Rome is the ones that have the brown blocks with the reddish look to them. And the way this game is going to be played is the game is divided into 5 years, each having 5 turns. And then at the end of that turn, you've got this winter turn. And the winter turn is basically did the game end? If the game didn't end, then we're going to do a couple things. And if it did end, it ended because you guys, one side got the amount of points that were needed, which are on the board here, which I'll show you guys here in just a sec. Actually, we're on it now, so I'll go ahead and touch on it. You can see, like Rome, for example, here is worth 2 victory points. We've got Athena over here, that's worth 1. Ephesus, that's worth another 1. And across this map are multiple cities that are worth points. Now, some aren't worth any points. They're just places that you're going to fight over as you're moving towards the ones that are worth points. But the first side who gets to 10 points hits that winter turn with 10 points, controlling whatever cities around equaling 10 points is going to win the game. You're going to do that by having 3 phases to each of the game turns. There's going to be the card phase, there's going to be a command phase, and then there's going to be the battle phase. So let's pop back here for just a sec, take a look at the components, and then we'll go over each one of the phases and how the game itself is actually played out. Now, when it comes to the game, like I said, there are the 5 turns, the 5 years, then the 5 turns. Over here to the top left of the game map itself, there are squares to help keep track of that. And the game comes with a couple of spare blocks just in case you mess one up. But I find these actually work really well as markers for the game turn. So I actually keep them tucked over here to the side to help keep track of battles or what game turn I'm on, all that good stuff. These work really well for that. We're also going to have 4 dice, and I like the sound of these dice. You ever notice that you have, sometimes you'll have dice that just sound good, that just feel good in your hand? The ones that come with this, these are those type of dice. They feel really good in the hand. They roll well. I like the D6s that don't have the sharp corners because it makes them roll just a little bit easier. Obviously, we're going to have the paper map itself. It's one of the 6-fold ones, so we've got 6 squares. It's cut in the middle, and this one side here is attached. So everything's going to fold over, and it is a pretty significant fold, but I did find that once I laid it all flat, creased it, right? Make sure that I creased it back over so it's laying flat. The blocks themselves are heavy enough to hold this down since they're not counters. They're not lightweight, so it's able to kind of keep this down flat, and you don't have to worry about it creasing back up or anything like that, like you do sometimes with the paper maps. I would say be careful right here in the center where it is split, and it's split so it can be folded back up and fit back in the box, but you want to just make sure when you're folding it back together that you don't actually tear it over here where it all comes together. Besides that, we are going to have a handful of cards that are going to be randomly dealt out to each of the 2 players, or the 2 sides rather, and these cards are going to be what you use to carry out the various commands, whether it's moving your units or levying new forces to place down onto the map or reinforce units that are already on the map. Besides the standard command cards, there are also God cards that are included as well. These carry out special actions when they are played. We'll touch on these specifically when we start talking about the card phase. And then obviously last and certainly not least is going to be the blocks with the values on them, right? So these are your units, and there's going to be multiple different types of units. You'll have things like your legions here, or auxiliaries, or navies, cavalry. There's even some elephants in here, multiple different types of units that can participate in the different battles, but all of the stats are the same, okay? When you look at them, they will all, when you're looking at these stats, they're easy to tell no matter whether you're looking at cavalry or legions or auxiliaries, whatever, they're all easy to understand. So this legion, for example, the strength is the Roman numeral that you see spread around, just like you've seen in other blocks. And as you turn the block around, that's the top center number is going to designate how strong the unit is. This is also effectively their steps. So 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, 4 step, yay, all the good stuff. This combat value is up here, up in the corner, and this tells you when they're going to attack in the flow of combat and what number they're looking for when they participate in battle. So your strength is how many dice that you're going to roll, and here is when and what number you're looking for. It's actually a very ingenious system and easy to keep track of. So as an example, if this legion were full strength, they would attack during the C's. There's going to be 4 different ones, A, B, C, and D. And A's are going to go before B, B's going to go before C, and so on. And then whatever number is next to that letter. So here we have C2. C2 means this will hit on a 2 or less. So it's whatever number it is or under is what you're looking to roll on a D6. So the higher this number, the better the unit, because it's going to have more probability of hitting. The number of dice it rolls is its strength, Okay, so that's center number. And then when and what number we're looking for are in the corner here. This will not change depending on the step losses, but the amount of dice the unit will roll will change depending on its strength value. And again, looking here at our boy Caesar. Caesar, awesome. He's got A3, so he's hitting fairly often, pretty good. If he's full strength, this represents the fact that he's going to have, bodyguard units and the like with him, so he's not going to be off fighting just by himself. Now, he would get to attack first. So comparing him to that Legion we were just looking at, his hits, since he's an A, would be applied before the C, and then obviously before the B's and D's as well. And he would roll whatever dice his strength was at. Now, the only difference between these leader units and the other regular types of units is leaders do not get to come back. If a leader is taken out by enemy forces, then they count as a victory point. They get to basically take the block and signify that they have been taken out, and now they have victory point. They get the trophy, Caesar's head, right? If they eliminate him. Don't worry, it's going to be the same for each side, though. We see we've got Pompey here. He's not quite as good as Caesar. Caesar kicks ass, so he's an A, whereas Pompey is only a B. But same thing. If Pompey gets taken out by the Roman forces, they will get, or Caesar's forces rather, he would get to keep that block as a victory point. There are some minor exceptions for things like ballista, which both sides can have, that will attack slightly differently, but for the most part, that is how combat's going to go with all of the different types of units. But for the most part, that is how the stats are going to be referenced for all the different types of units. All right, so as we go on referencing this, we're going to get into the card phase, the command phase, and the battle phase, so I can explain the basics of the game. I'm going to interject just a couple of my own thoughts as far as trying to play this one solitaire, because I was thinking about that as well while I was going over the rules of the game, because this one is not designed for solitaire play. Obviously, it does have hidden movements involved with it, since the blocks are turned as such that you can only see your forces. You can't see the forces that are across from you. And that's the way it's designed to be played heads up. But I think with some small tweaks, you could play it solitaire. All right, so when it comes to the card phase of the game, that's where you're going to deal out your cards to each player, and each player is going to be dealt a hand of 6 cards. They will pick 5 that they're going to keep, and they will discard 1. Now, if you're trying to play this solitaire, I would simply just deal out 5 cards to each side, and then when it came to the AI, or the side that you're trying to solitaire, just randomly draw cards for them. So set their 5 cards down and then flick them over and lay them to count as the card that they're playing for that turn. Because that's how it's going to work. Each side is going to secretly lay down 1 card, and you will compare those cards and their movement values. The movement value is the top left Roman numeral. So in this case, looking at our card, it's a 2, means 2 movement points. The circles underneath it are what's called levies. That's how many points of refreshed troops or new blocks, whatever that you're adding to the board, get to come on. Generally speaking, the higher the move, the less levies you're going to have, but the cards are random in the stuff that they have on there. The thing of it is, whoever has the higher move value gets to go first during this turn. So let's say this was Caesar's forces and this was Pompey. If the cards that they had played down, that means Pompey gets to go first this round. Had they both set down a card that had the same move value, so let's say instead it was this, then if it's tied in move value, Caesar's forces get to go first. Now, you remember I had said earlier that there are those special cards, the God cards, the event cards. Well, they do something special when you play those down. For example, Apollo here, it allows you to copy the card played by your opponent last turn. Use the copied card when determining player 1 cannot be played in the first turn of a year, because obviously you wouldn't have any cards to copy. Each one of these is going to have a special event, special power that they get to use. The only thing is if both players happen to secretly lay down a event card, then the turn gets canceled flat out. And that means that neither one of the cards gets played. There's no units moved, there's no levies, the events don't happen, nothing happens. You literally just cancel the turn out completely. Okay, so let's look at the board here real quick and take a look at some examples. So let's say this is our card play. This means the player who is playing this card gets 2 moves and a single levy that they get to do. Now, when it comes to movement points are a little wonky, but they're easy to understand once you get the gist of it. So when it comes to your movement points, you can use those movement points for individual moves, for group moves, for navy movement, for amphibious movement. There's multiple different ways that you can use those movement points. So when we're looking at our board here, we could use a single movement point to move all the blocks at an individual city, because your blocks are always going to be located at a city unless they're navy, and then obviously they'll be in a sea or at a port somewhere. So you can choose to use those movement points to move all the blocks at a single city, or if there's only a single block, to move the single block at a city. But there are limits to how many blocks a road can sustain. A major road, ones that are solid lines like these, can only support 4 blocks. A minor road, ones that are dashes like these located here, can only support 2 blocks. Now, when you use that movement point, you can use that movement point to move a unit either 1 or 2 spaces, 1 or 2 cities. But if they are wanting to perform an attack, they can only do so if they've moved a single space. So it has to be adjacent to their target. They can't attack someone that's 2 spaces away. They have to get close enough to carry out their assault. Now, the roads might have limits, but there's no amount of limits when it comes to moving blocks into a city, at least your friendly blocks. So in effect, you can think of it as no stacking limit. There can be as many blocks as you want to put into a single city. However, in the winter turn there at the end of the round, there are limits to the amount of blocks a city can support. And if you have too many blocks located in one place, you could end up losing some of your forces. So looking at our 2 movement points located here, we could spend 1 movement point to move these 2 units up here into Rome to try to claim those victory points. We could use another victory point to move these units over here to join them. We can use movement points to move the navies that we have, right, our little ships here, across into different seas. And that actually comes in very much handy to performing amphibious movements, because your units can do amphibious movements from locations around the board as long as you control the sea. So by having a navy here, these blocks could use this to move all the way over here for a single movement point, right? Basically, they turn that sea into a road by having your navies control it. Now, the only thing that can prevent you from moving is an enemy unit. So they can actually do what's called pinning. So let's say we've got our city here, the Neapolis, right? If I'm saying that even close to correctly, let's say this is just our situation, right? We've got 1 of Caesar's forces there and 2 of ours, and we want to move some of these guys. Well, an enemy will pin down an equal number of enemy blocks. So we could move a single block if we wanted to, but one of them would be stuck there since they are effectively being pinned by the enemy forces. Lastly, when it comes to movement, there are a few special spots on the board, straits. Like we see the little blue arrow located here. There's another one over here. There's a couple more on the board as well. And you can move units across those, but I do believe they have the same restrictions that roads do. I think it's 2 for straits per turn. Now, moving isn't the only thing that you're going to do during your command phase, though. Because remember, we've got our movement points and then our levy points. Levy points are really easy to understand, okay? If you already have a unit on the board, Let's say this unit was here on its 2 side. We could spend a levy point to bump it up to its 3 strength. Boom. Just like that. Really easy to understand. However, you can use those levy points to levy new units onto the board. So new blocks, right? We want to put some new blocks on there. Well, let's say we've got our Athena block here for the Pompeii forces, and we want to put that on there. We want to deploy them to the board. You can do that, but you can only deploy forces to the board that are in the area that are so named. So here, this legion could only go to the board in Athena, and there would have to already be friendly forces in that area for you to deploy them. Because a city can either be enemy controlled, or it can be unoccupied, or it can be friendly by having your forces in it. The only way that you can deploy forces over to a city, though, is if you control it. And legions like this have to be sent to or levied in the city that they are so named for. Don't forget, like I mentioned, though, there are units like your auxiliaries that do not have that stipulation, since there isn't obviously a city for them to deploy to. All right, so that covers the command phase, right? During your command phase, you're going to move, you're going to levy. Battle phase, the next phase of the game that happens, is going to be where you resolve all the conflicts that happen because now opposing forces are occupying the same area. So looking at our example here, let's say these were our forces, right? We had Caesar's forces of some cavalry there, right? Strength 2, B2, and they were fighting off a Strength 2, C2 Athena Legion, okay? The Legion that we were just talking about. They got deployed and they are there. Since the Caesar's forces are B2, they would get to perform their attack before the C2s. Remember, it goes A, B, C, D. So since they have a strength of 2, they would roll 2 dice, compare it to their number, which is 2, and they would look for dice that were 2 or under. Well, they missed, so no damage done. And then the next letter down, so C would go, they would roll looking for 2s and under. Well, they roll like crap too, didn't cause any hits. The way battles work, though, is that the attacker gets 4 rounds to complete their attack. If they don't, they have to retreat to where they perform or where they launch their original attack from. So you don't get to just attack indefinitely. Also, troops do have the ability to volunteer to retreat, but the thing is you don't get to retreat until your letter comes up. So let's say our Pompeii forces here wanted to retreat. This legion wanted to retreat away from the combat. Since they are a C, the B would get to attack first before they would be allowed to retreat away. And again, they could only retreat to a vacant or friendly city. They couldn't retreat into an occupied city. Something else that's also cool about it when it comes to the combat of the game is the fact that you can have reserves, reinforcements basically coming into it. So if you had other forces that were nearby, right, and these guys attacked, they came in, you could have forces coming in to help you. And it works both ways. So the attackers could have reinforcements, reserves who are launching an attack from another adjacent city. So in other words, you're attacking from 2 cities that have roads going into your target. And when you do something like that, the reserves for both the attacker and the defender don't come into play until the second round of combat. So that first round of combat will always be with the main attackers and the sole defenders, and then any reserves would get to come in. Couple last little things when it comes to the game. There is one standout. This is Cleopatra, who starts on the side of Pompeii but can switch and join Caesar's side, and basically she can go back and forth depending on who's killed her last or attacked her last. But she's a special piece that gets included in the game, and she will constantly respawn down here in the corner in Alexandria. So that will happen on the winter turn. And like I was saying, the winter turn will end when all 5 cards are played. So like I said, 5 cards for each side. Once those have been played out for each side, they're going to go through the winter turn. Cleopatra is going to go home, and then you're going to see if anyone's won. Remember, you're going to go around counting up those victory points and see if either side has 10. And if they do, they get to win. If not, then navies are going to have to move back and then check for things like supply. Because remember, like I said, these cities across the map can only support so many units. Yeah, you might be able to create this huge wall of defense with 10 blocks all in one city, but then that city can't support all of them and you end up losing some of those forces. So generally speaking, all cities can support 3, but victory point cities get to support 3 plus whatever their number is. So like Ephesus here could support 4. This one could support 4. Alexandria could support 5. Rome could support 5. Now, also, I did not mention the levy pool because roughly speaking, I've got the board set up for a start of a game. So each side has a huge number of other blocks that haven't been deployed to the board yet. These are called your levy pool, right? So these are forces that you can recruit, levy, and bring into combat. Only thing is you can bring these back, but they can't be brought back in the same round that they were killed. So let's say, Ephesus was killed here, you would have to set him to the side, and they say to do that face up. That way you know that they were killed that round and they can't be levied again until a winter turn has gone by. At that point, you'll place all the ones that were killed off face up to signify the fact that now they can be levied again. All right, so ultimately, what do I think of the game? And I gotta say, I was a little surprised. I was caught pleasantly by surprise because I didn't expect as much nuance to this, right? It's got no areas, it's got no hexes, it's all about the cities, but it works. There's a fair amount of strategy involved in this because of where the location is of all the victory point cities. So like there's one here, I think there's another one here, Rome's here. And the way the game starts out, Pompeii actually has 7 points from the beginning. So they can do a fair amount of damage right off the bat if they can levy that. But part of the problem is look, there's 3 points here that they could get to, but none of these are friendly cities. So they've got to get forces over there. But if they start getting forces over there, then Caesar's got an open path. Rome's 2 points right there. And leaving this open, well, now you give them a chance to take Syracuse, Utica, whatever it is down over here. Basically, if you make that quick push to try to gain those easy points over here, well, then you're leaving points here that are nice and easy, and Caesar's very quickly flip that over, and now both sides are, 5 points or 6 points, whatever it is. Not to mention, I love the strategy that comes into play with trying to control the oceans. Each side only has 5 navies that they can levy. I believe they start with 1 or 2 apiece out there. But the ability to be able to sea hop your forces, amphibiously move your forces, is tremendous. Because if you gain control of just a few connected seas, all of a sudden you can move armies from way over here to way over there with just a handful of movement points, whereas it would take your opponent multiple turns to be able to walk them around, depending on which way they go, if they don't have control of those seas. So those seas are mightily powerful and something to be fought over. The movement potential they give you is just tremendous. Also, when it comes to the combat itself, at first, I was thinking it's going to be so simplistic, right? Because it's just strength points, rolling strength points, comparing a number, and that's it. It'd be so basic. But the fact of that order, right? That A, B, C, or D on when troops get to attack is huge. Because sometimes you're going to have the advantage. You're going to have the initiative in combat. So like your leaders generally have that higher initiative. They're A's or B's. So you want to get them stuck in, but if they get stuck in, there's no coming back, and that's a free victory point right there for your opponent. So there's advantages to using them, but there's advantages to not losing them. So it goes back and forth. So combat isn't just cut and dry. It isn't just rolling the dice and seeing what happens, especially with the fact of the initiative. And then, like I was talking about, being able to move forces in, right? So being able to have those reserve forces in. And in fact, you can have situations where the attacker comes in, performs an attack, and let's say they wipe that defender out, boom, right off in that first attack, but the defender had reinforcements, reserves coming in. Well, now that actually changes the combat. So now the defender is considered the attacker in the order of battle and the way things are going on, because effectively the attacker took out the target so quickly. So now the defender's reserves are considered the attacker coming in. The swings are actually really cool that you can see happen in this game. And then, like I was saying, you want to have the ability to have a little bit of random stuff happen, right? And I think they get that with these event cards being able to be tossed in. And I especially like that aspect of if both players pull out an event card at the same time, it cancels the turn, because you might be holding one of these cards as a trump card and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get him. Yeah, right there. What do you think of that, buddy? And then it's boom, your opponent had flipped out their own event card that they were waiting for just that right moment. And now both of you have effectively canceled each other out, and it's a null turn, right? Nothing's happening, and now you've got to rethink your whole strategy because your trump card got destroyed. As far as it goes with playing it solitaire, I do think that is something that could be done. Like I was saying, simply deal out 5 cards to one side, and then just grab the top card, flip it over, and like, okay, well, that side's getting X amount of moves and however many levies. You could still compare it, right? See what their move is versus your move, drawing the cards randomly. The only thing is I really think you have to forego the hidden information and turn these around. You're going to have to do that just like you would if you were playing a general hex encounter war game, heads up, right, solitaire. You would have to know what each side has. You're not going to be able to play with the hidden information here. I just don't think it'll work, because you're going to be moving troops across the cities and the roads, and all of a sudden you find out one of them's a Navy and should have never been there, right? So the hidden information just wouldn't work as far as playing the solitaire. But I do think it could work with the card play if you just randomly flip the cards over as what the AI or the opposing side is doing. So yeah, that's Julius Caesar by Columbia Games. I think it would be great for anyone who's looking to play heads up. There's a depth here that I wasn't anticipating when I was first reading up on this game, that I think could be really fun for a couple people doing it heads up. And I think there's enough here that you could solitaire it if you wanted to. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're looking for a solitaire game, there's others that are out there that are going to beat this, right? Because it's not designed to be played solitaire. But if you have someone you could play with and you're just looking for a way to play it heads up and solitaire, yeah, I think you could pull it off. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Make sure you go check out Columbia Games Kickstarter. Should have a few days left on it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Put any of your comments, concerns down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Y'all take care.